So you're all incredibly welcome this evening. It's so good to see so many faces that I know and that I know have been to our live events and have been in our courses. And it's so good to see you all. It's really lovely. I love doing these events, especially after the bigger events, doing these smaller, more intimate events and running through the demo. So I'm excited to be able to do that tonight for you. So tonight, the lay of the land tonight is a case study and it is a demo. So you'll see that case study in action. And we're going to work through two fundamental principles to try and help us understand safe embodiment. So we are in safe embodiment land with an eye on how to prevent re-traumatization. So that is where we're working at tonight. And we are going to work that through, as I said, a case study, a demo, and just two very basic concepts. Now, what I am hoping to do for you, or what I have intention for you this evening, is that I want to talk you through the two concepts. I want to introduce the case study. And then I want all of us here in the room to be able to add our voices to the case study based upon the two concepts I teach. So it's not a passive workshop, it's an active workshop tonight, so that you get to use your voice and get to use your understanding of the case study and implement what I am showing you today, so that you walk away with something tangible, some sort of understanding of the process, rather than me reiterating the theory. We're going to put it into practice. So that is what we're going to do tonight. By the end of this, you will understand safe embodiment, hopefully from a different lens. You will understand what is required to ensure safe embodiment. You will understand what skills, and you will understand the path or the map that is needed for safe embodiment. That is my intentionality. Now, why? Why? Yes, I am a client advocate. Of course, I always come at everything from a client's perspective. But really, the clients need to be supported by you, the therapist. And that's what the most important thing is here today, is you. Your understanding, your knowledge, your confidence, your ability to put this stuff in practice. And that is my angle tonight. It's normally the client's angle, but my angle tonight is for you. So I'm going to try my best and answer as many questions and really advocate for you tonight. Because what do we understand? We understand that there's a lot asked of us as therapists. What is asked of us is that we are regulated. What is asked of us is that we have done our work. What is asked of us is that we understand the theory. What is asked of us is that we can hold therapeutic content in the therapeutic container, all while understanding our own inner work, all while holding our own regulated nervous system, all while understanding the interventions. It's a hell of a lot of work. I don't know how you feel about me saying that, but I hope that you feel heard in that. You know, we have a load of trainee therapists. They're trainee to the model, they're training to the model. And we hear this all of the time. We hear the level of demand that is placed upon us as therapists. So I'm giving voice to that tonight. And hopefully this workshop will speak to that tonight. How does that feel? Let me know that the chat works, and let me know how you feel about the direction of this and the intentionality of this. It is really to serve you. Just let me know in the chat. I'm going to open the chat as usual. And let's see how we go. So let me see if that chat is working. How do we feel about that? Hiya, Karen. Good to see you. All good. Good. Feels good. Good, Armande. That is brilliant. Fantastic. Sounds good, Samantha. Much needed, isn't it? Support for us, much needed, absolutely. Good, Andrea, good, fantastic. Okay, so good, Mary, so good to see you, good, Anita, brilliant. All right, so that's where we will go. I am not going to deliberate on why safe embodiment is important. I'm going to show you why it's important. But all of that to say is that we understand that the field is alive with the idea of safe embodiment or embodiment at the moment. And everybody's talking about embodiment and everybody's talking about getting under the body. And what we want to talk about tonight is safe embodiment so that we do not re-traumatize. So that is the fundamental angle. There are two parts of that, and these are the two parts that we're going to get into. The first part of that is understanding the hierarchy of embodiment, and the second part of that is understanding the capacity for embodiment. So we're going to get into the hierarchy of embodiment very quickly, and then we're going to move to the capacity for embodiment and what is required for capacity. And what you need as a therapist to understand what your client's hierarchy is and what your client's capacity is. And here's a quick question out of the park. How many of your clients show up with a idea, or show up basically with a deep willingness for therapeutic process? So a strong willingness to be in process, but this huge gap with the process of capacity for it. Let me know in the chat. So I'll ask it again. How many of your clients are showing up with this huge willingness to get somewhere, to deepen into trauma, to deepen into the work? They've read this book, they've seen that podcast, they want to get to root cause, they understand root cause is the way forward. So they show up with this huge willingness, but have very little capacity. Excuse me. Very common, Samantha. When the rubber meets the road, they actually don't, yes, Sandra, they actually don't have the capacity to do the work. They have all of the willingness, but no capacity. Yeah. How many of your clients sometimes slide in and out? Yes, I know. 20% seems about right. And then what we do understand is that there's a load of clients who don't have either willingness or capacity, but are still there. And that's a conundrum on itself. Like, how do we start that process? Where do we go with that? And the pressure that's put on us, the pressure that we feel to help, the stuckness that we feel, all of that stuff that we feel then that's transferred onto us that we're sitting with in the room. So we want to talk about that. We want to get into the detail of that very quickly. So the first thing that I would like for you, and I know many of you here have participated in our programs, many of you here are in our safe embodiment courses, many of you here are taking our advanced stuff, will have heard me say this 1,000 times. The hierarchy of embodiment is your best friend. I want you to know this when you leave here today. When you sit down with a client, I want you to be able to understand what they want to embody to, where they want to go to, and what that might look like for them. So the hierarchy of embodiment. And we look at that through what we call primary and secondary pain. We frame the hierarchy of embodiment through this idea of primary and secondary pain. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to talk you through the hierarchy of embodiment and show you a visual. And then I would like to ask you a few questions about how your clients are showing up in the room and how you can immediately assess what they are currently embodied to, where they want to go in terms of embodiment, and how you can measure that almost instantly. Because I want you to walk away here today with a type of assessment in your head. Why? Because that assessment of hierarchy of embodiment will keep you safe. And if you're safe in practice, your client is going to be safe. If you understand the safety around the hierarchy of embodiment, which is what we're about to do, then you will not push too far too fast, and you will not go too slow and too cumbersome. You will know exactly how to pace yourself. And pacing is the medicine. Pacing is exactly the medicine for safe embodiment. So when we go through this, I want you then to think about yourself in that. I want you to think about your own practice in that. And I want you to think about the many clients and say, okay, this is probably where we are in terms of the hierarchy of embodiment. And this is probably where the client wants to go. And then we'll talk about capacity after that. Does that feel good? Anybody, any questions? Brilliant, Anita. Many have come from being referred by healthcare professionals who believe they need help. This makes it all the more beyond, Anita, challenging, because where that puts you is that puts you in a place of low stage of process. Low stage of process, low embodiment, low willingness, low capacity. You are starting from scratch there. There is no depth of embodiment. There's no depth of work that has to be done. That's all scaffolding work. And hopefully this process will help you with that. So, okay, let me open the documents and we'll have a wee look at this. So, hierarchy of embodiment. Where are your clients working? Or where are they wanting to work towards? So when we think about the presentation of pain, we think about secondary pain and the functions of the mind. We think about how this presents in the room. So this normally presents in the room as depression, anxiety, maybe disordered eating, maybe procrastination, maybe perfectionism. But fundamentally, secondary pain is a byproduct of the original core wound. It's an adaptation, if you like, of the original pain. And that secondary pain is often very, very embodied. What does that mean? It means that the client can articulate from an embodied perspective their current reality, their current lived experience. So if a client is articulating to you depression or procrastination or shame from overfunctioning or burnout, it is very likely that there's a fluidity to that expression. There is very likely an embodied fluidity. What does that mean? It means that the client can articulate the feeling of it. They can articulate the experience of it. Not every client now, but most clients that come to you that make the appointment themselves, to Anita's point, that go there willingly, have some sort of problem that they want solved. And they have a problem that they want solved. They have to be in awareness of that problem. They have to understand that problem. Often that problem is secondary in nature, but can be very, very embodied. So the client has an articulation of the problem from an embodied perspective. Now, therein lies our first problem as therapists. Because if they are coming with secondary pain and we do not understand that it's secondary pain, we can read those signals as capacity. This client is in their body. They've got capacity to be in their body. They've got a willingness to be in their body. They are articulating the emotion in their body. They're articulating the experience of procrastination. They are articulating the experience of whatever it is that they have the secondary difficulty with. And we can read this as ready. We can read this as capacity. We can read this as a willingness. And that's sometimes where we can go too far too fast. We can deepen into something that we don't know how to get back out of. How many of your clients are presenting with secondary pain that is embodied and they are fluid too? What percentage of your clients are presenting with secondary pain that they are embodied to? All. Brilliant, Armady. So you're getting them all. Everybody knows their secondary pain. They have made the appointments. They're making the investment. They're making the time. They are showing up. They are asking for help. So Anita, yours might be less than Armandy's. Armandy's saying all yours are less because yours are coming as referrals. Yeah, they don't know it's secondary, but they know the pain. Absolutely, they're embodied to the pain. Now this is where I really want you to concentrate, right? And when we go to case study, I want you to see this in the case study. Okay? I want you to be able to read in the case study what is being presented here and why. Most of yours, Karen, too, you're coming with embodied pain, with embodied secondary. Yeah, perfect. And for those of you that are saying people are showing up in embodied secondary pain, how many of them understand that there's something deeper? None, Karen? No, I see you nodding. Let me know in the chat. It's really important for me. None. Okay. But there's still a willingness. And there we have that, what, yeah. Sometimes they worry about that. Yes. Not the norm. Yeah. Brilliant. So what we find is they're presenting with secondary. They want the secondary solved. They want to understand why the secondary is there. They're embodied to the secondary. And we can read that, if we're not careful, as capacity for deeper. We can read secondary embodied pain as capacity. And when we don't know how to assess it, then we can go too far too fast. So the second part of this is understanding what is underneath. What is it that we talk about here that is driving this secondary pain? Many models talk about, root cause. They talk about, developmental trauma. They talk about complex trauma. We are understanding that through the lens of primary pain. So the definition widens when we talk about primary pain, because it doesn't have to be under the context or under the rules, under the diagnostic rules of developmental trauma and complex trauma. It widens out a wee bit. We see that all the time. So what we're saying here is, in secondary, there is always primary. Always primary. Primary is always, always there. And what I am asking you to ascertain is how much capacity does your client have to be in primary? And if you began deepening, would you end up here? Would there be a likelihood that you would end up here? Your understanding of the differentiation between primary and secondary is key to you keeping yourself safe. Do you not going too far too fast? Do you not going too deep? Do you not using the signals of embodiment in secondary as a key to an embodied client who's filled with capacity? And your ability to understand the presentations and the differentiation in the presentation is what will be able to keep the client inside that beautiful window of tolerance as you titrate towards deeper stuff. Tell me how you are thinking and feeling. Yes, Karen, they are familiar with their narrative, but not with the primary pain. They would not have the interoceptive awareness yet. Absolutely not. Spoken like an in-core specialist. Yeah, absolutely. So they're from they might have a narrative, but around maybe trauma, maybe ACEs, maybe difficulties. And they might have, and when you see this case study tonight, you'll see this all play itself out. I am asking you, how many of you, and just be honest with yourself more than anything else, how many of you would be able to differentiate primary and secondary in the room? Just put a wee Y or an N in the chat for me. Because this hierarchy is your foundation. Once you understand this, this will be the anchor that'll keep you safe. Keep you safe. And if you're safe, your client's safe. Yes, Armady, you see it. Yeah. Yes. No. Yes and no, Anita. Yes, I love that. Not so sure. Yes, I love that. Look, this is perfect. This is why you're here. If you were sure, you wouldn't be here. Absolutely. So what is the actual fundamental difference? So let's talk a little bit about that so that you have more eyes on it, that you more understand it. What's the embodied differentiation? Primary pain tends to be limbic in nature. It's often very, very, very intense. Has nervous system energy with it, nervous system activation energy with it. Has a deep, deep resonance in the body and will scramble the mind in a moment to try and find a resolution for itself. Primary pain tends not to have any anchoring to it, can feel overwhelming, overloaded, can flood the client very quickly. Client can get lots of data. The hippocampus can give out lots of information around the primary pain. Sometimes, which is very interesting, the client can go quieter as they move into that child's consciousness. Softer in voice, softer in prospect, because all of the energy is in the body belonging to the limbic energy, belonging to that limbic pain. Not always will they be hyper aroused, screaming and roaring, or, in panic or in disassociation. And you'll see that in this case study that we have, you'll see the quieting, the softening as they move into a new, nearly experiential paradigm with primary pain. Secondary has much more narrative, much more detail, much more people, much more places, much more things, has an energy about it that's different than primary. And so we see this differentiation experientially in the room. Have any of these ever seen primary pain in action? In front of you? Someone in front of you? What, you seen it, Samantha? Yeah. Does it resonate to you if you've seen it the way that I speak of it? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else ever seen it in front of you in a room? It's very, very, very sobering. Yes, Armand, you have too. Yes, especially the quieter part. Yes, yeah. It's very sobering. It's a huge privilege. You know that you're in, the energy in the room changes, the energy between you and the client changes, everything changes. Collapse, yeah, in posture and in tears. Yes, yes, for those yes. Brilliant. So we see the difference, we know the difference. But what I really want you to understand is the knowing of the difference and the signaling for the difference. What does that mean? Just because a client has capacity in secondary does not mean that they have capacity in primary. Are we okay with that? And the differentiation between the two will stop you going too far too fast. It'll stop you assuming that there's capacity when there's not. Now, that is not technically your fault. It's very, very easy. And that's what we've built this case study around tonight. Very, very easy, especially today. ChatGPT, the internet, the amount of sound bites that are out there. Especially today, it's very easy for a well-meaning client who wants to inform themselves, who wants to psychoeducate themselves, to come to your room or come to your space. And I'm using the word masquerade, but masquerade's not fair on the client because the client's doing their best. But to mask as huge capacity for embodiment when they are not there. They have a willingness for sure, but their capacity is different. And your way of checking that, your first way of checking that, is understanding the differentiation between primary and secondary. We understand that primary is usually of the past. Primary is usually limbic in nature, that has all that limbic energy to it. It has usually the voice of the child's consciousness energy. It is usually a part of the experience of the originating trauma or trauma experience. It is usually the then. The secondary is usually the now, the very strong presentation in the now. Sometimes you will get clients who are presenting with primary pain in the now because the primary pain has birthed and they are in the fullness of that primary pain in this moment, in this now, even though they do not understand it. But hopefully you will be able to understand that because you see the differentiation. And that's our first assessment, the differentiation between primary and secondary. You have no idea how much this saves clients or saves therapists. We have the Safe Embodiment course. We teach this constantly. This is our first module in the Safe Embodiment course. And what we hear from practitioners time and time and time again is how this understanding has been able to let them slow down, has been able to let them not go at the client's pace of willingness, but to go at the client's pace of capacity. Because we are pulled by the client into their paradigm of willing. I want to get there. I'm in pain. I want to get to the root cause. I want to get to the parts. So when we understand this, we are saying you are client-led. Of course you're client-led, but you are client-led not at their own risk. You are not being pulled by their willingness. You're being directed by their capacity. That is what understanding these two things will do for you. And being able to see it differently. Now, if anybody has any questions, stick it in the chat for me. I'm going to change direction because I want you to see, therefore, how we apply the second principle to this and why the second principle is going to be so helpful for you. So I'm going to stop that share. If you have any questions, throw it in the chat. And we'll take those questions in the chat from you. Anything. Everybody's frantically writing. Am I going too fast? Am I all right, Anita? Am I slowing it down enough? Okay. All right. Hi, Siobhan. I can see you. Hi. Okay. So then the second helpful thing that we'll look through this client's case study is what we call the SAPS process. So it's this really easy snapshot to ask a set of questions of your client before you would begin to embody anything. And SAPS, I'm going to pull the graphic up in a minute, but SAPS basically means, does the client have the safety? Do they have the awareness to be in their body? Do they have the ability to process whatever emotion that is? And do they have the capacity to return to safety and a set of equilibrium, or a stage of equilibrium, or a state of equilibrium? Let me share this document with you and we'll have a discussion. Okay. So I want you to keep your eye on this with a view to bringing primary pain or secondary pain in. I want you to ask this of every client. Does the client, and this is a capacity test, does the client have the safety to bring this emotion into their body? Is the conditions for the client there? Do they have the capacity for awareness, which is unity to that emotional content? Unity starts a process of movement, physical movement through the body. And can they do that in a way that brings them back to safety and a state of equilibrium where they're not caught in the energy of the emotion, trying frantically to shake it off? Can they move safely into it in awareness? Can they process it appropriately? And can they come out the other end in a state of equilibrium, returning to their now, returning to their place in this now? Can they anchor back into where they are, who they are, what is required of them in their normal life? Can they return back to fatherhood? Can they return back to motherhood? Can they return back to getting into that car and driving wherever they want? Can they reach the stage of equilibrium? Here's the truth. How many of us can actually do that? Even us therapists have a difficult time at this. And what can we do this with, and what can we not do this with? So you see how these two tools will really help you. Can a client do this with primary pain? The chances are no. So the pressure that we're under from the client and from ourselves to get somewhere, to get a remedy, to get to root cause, to understand, cannot be forced because of this process. Because if you override that, then what you're creating is unsafety. Like, you wouldn't build a house without scaffolding. You just wouldn't. Why am I so passionate? If any of these were at the last masterclass, I have said this 100 times, and I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but I was a young woman who was forced into embodiment overnight, who had been disunified overnight. Sorry, disunified for years and embodied overnight. Did I have the safety to be in that body? Absolutely not. Was my nervous system alive because of this unsafety? Yes. Did I have the capacity to be in awareness of what was pummeling through my body? Absolutely not. Could I get out of the process of it? No. So I was stuck for days upon days in what was endless cycles of emotion and dysregulation and never really reaching equilibrium. This was going on for days because I didn't have the capacity to do what I'm showing you here. So we cannot in this industry, we cannot be talking about embodiment without the safety of embodiment. It cannot happen. It should not be allowed to happen in the industry. Because this is people's actual inner worlds that are at play here. This is serious stuff. We need, like, if I had my way, I would make safe embodiment compulsory for every single therapist. And I kid you not. I would demand, we actually created as part of our process. It's a key cornerstone of our training. But for those that didn't want to be in-course specialists, I would absolutely encourage them to take this process of SAPS so that they can understand. So now I want you to think, if we reverse back to the point one, what is my client embodied to? And what's their capacity for it? If my client is embodied to secondary, can we get them into the SAPS process? More than likely, yes. because it's so familiar to them, and they probably have loads of ways to process and return to equilibrium and loads of regulation tools. And they probably could get themselves through that SAP process if it's secondary and they're aware. The majority of people who do not understand primary, who aren't in primary, this is a new world, and are embodied to primary too quickly, too fast, too speedily, won't be able to complete this process. They will not be able to. They mightn't have the safety, but the awareness might be forced. Where does that happen in the industry? That there is no inherent safety in the client, but they're forced on the awareness. Where does that happen? It sometimes can happen in psychedelics, where the safety in the body is not necessarily there, but they're forced on the awareness of something. Yeah. So sometimes that happens in the industry. Breath work can do that. There isn't an inherent safety or capacity in the nervous system or in the client's capacity to allow emotion in, and breath work or heavy breath work can trigger them. Not all breath work now. Breath work, there's regulations, beautiful, but there's the problem. We have to understand the two types of skills here: unity skills and regulation skills. So this sometimes people are forced under with no capacity to process and no capacity to return to equilibrium. We have to, and I'm going to introduce the case study, and we'll talk about the skills of SAPs and how the skills of SAPs will help you. But for now, I am hoping that these 2 points in the presentation, the understanding of the hierarchy of embodiment, what they're embodied to, and then the process of SAPs, how they move through SAPs, can they in primary and secondary, can they do that, and is it safe to do so? And if it is not safe to do so, how do you create that safety? Yeah, Michelle, hypnotherapy, I've never thought about that, but that's true as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I'm only after seeing your comments, Armandi. I've missed that interception. Sorry. So 2 things. What are they embodied to? What's their hierarchy? And do they have the capacity to move through this embodiment in a way that is helpful to them? Yeah, everybody okay with that? Those 2. And have we any questions about that? Because if you've any questions, I want to clear them up so that when we move through the case study, that we can, that you're not, that you understand these 2 concepts, because when you hear the case study, it'll really come alive, but I don't want you to have any questions. We'll come back to the process as well. All right. Does everybody want to see how passionate I get? My husband was saying, "Will I run a bath for 8:30 for you?" I'm like, maybe 9:30. I'm only joking. I'll not keep you that long, promise you. It's just my bread and butter. It's so vitally important. Okay, so let's take a breath. But I'm talking to me to take a breath. I'm not talking to you. I'll take a breath, and then we'll move on into this case study. And this case study is incredibly dear to my heart. It's a live case study. It's not, when I say live, it's a true case study. So you can ask me any questions you need about the case study. So the client that we have here is a 30-plus-year-old female. If you want to write this down, you can. If you just like to listen, you can as well. She's a 30-plus-year-old female. She is presenting with secondary pain. So she has what she has described as a disordered eating problem. Not eating disorder, but disordered eating. She understands that she's eating for reasons that she doesn't quite understand. It's causing shame. She has anxiety, and she also has depression in what she calls waves. She's incredibly embodied to all of that. She has eczema also. She has done an awful lot of therapeutic work in her time, even though she's only 30. She's the tender age of 30. But she has done an awful lot of therapeutic work, and she has huge levels of uh, education, huge levels of ed psych. She understands this stuff. She can regulate her anxiety. She has all the techniques and all of the tools. Yeah. Secondary pain, embodied secondary pain, can regulate it, can manage it, and has this very strong desire to get to root cause. Very strong desire to understand what is happening for her. Talks about the fact that there is no ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. There is no big warning ACEs. There has never been any difficulty in that regard in her family home. There has been divorce. And that is the only thing that she points to in relation to why she might have an eating or a disordered eating, why she has eczema, why she has all of this fear of relationships, why she has this depression, why she has this anxiety. She can't really articulate why, despite the many, many years of therapy and the many years of psychotherapy, mind-led psychotherapy, CBT. Not that there's a problem with that. Please don't be sending me emails. There's a place for everything and everything in its place. But she's tried it all, and it hasn't worked. And there's a willingness and a demand on her to go further. She talks about grief. And she talks about her absolute unwillingness to touch it. And she talks about examples of grief and collapse. So she talks about grief, and she talks about examples of people dying in her life, like her grandma. And she talks about loss through the lens of grief. And she talks about this intolerance, the absolute intolerance of it, the panic of it, the fear of it, the anxiety of it, the unwillingness of it. From this very, very basic presentation, if we add what we've just learnt, what do we know that she's actually safely embodied to? Let me know in the chat. What do we know that she is safely embodied to? And that she may be able to freely work with in the room? Secondary pain, Samantha, absolutely. So what might we be having embodied conversations around? Does anybody remember what she's embodied to? Yeah. Besides present pain, Armandi, absolutely, 100%. Depression, anxiety, shame, anxiety, depression. Bingo, there you are. My work here is done. If you've got that, my work here is done. We can call it a night. Fantastic. Do we know that she can move this through the SAPS process? She doesn't seem to be stuck on it. We don't know, so we'd have to check. Yes. So we would have to check how quick her equilibrium return is, how quick when she's embodied any of this, how she moves back, how she regulates, how she resources. Fair enough? Now, obviously the elephant in the room is grief. Yeah? At this stage, do we think that she's got capacity to be in that grief? Look at the resounding no's. No, no. And everybody should have a sense of, and I wouldn't touch it. Yes, my work here is done. Yes, no, 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 don't touch it. Good. Yes, this is the stuff that this is workshops designed for. No, don't touch it. It has a tail of tonic immobility. What does I mean by tail? I don't mean a tale as in a story. Yeah. I mean it has a tale of experience of tonic immobility, which means you touch that, you're going there. You embody grief, you're going to tonic immobility. Who wants to work with tonic immobility in a room? No. Has anybody ever seen tonic immobility in a room? Yeah. So you want to be able to ascertain from your assessments, from just your understanding of the two principles, I am not touching this with a barge pole, despite her willingness. So this is going to be a slow and steady wins the race. This is not going to be a fast. I am not going to be led by her willingness. I am going to be led by her capacity. I am going to be led by her capacity, and I'm going to have to be congruent about that capacity. What does that give you? What does understanding those two principles, in this case conceptualization, give you? Because I can hear your confidence already. Your no, your unwillingness to be led, your own boundaries, your own framework, your own knowing there's a lot of work that has to be done here for any of that primary. We don't even know what the secondary capacities are. So I can hear your steadiness. Do you feel that in yourselves? Yes, that is what we do not want, is give safety in it. Absolutely in it. It gives you safety. That's my primary principle here. I want to give you knowledge, not so that you just have knowledge. What's good is knowledge. So that when you walk into that room, you've got your capacity, you've got your safety, you've got your tools, you've got your understanding. You're feeling not swept up by the moment in therapy. You're feeling that you know the boundaries, that you know the capacities, that you know that this framework gives you all of that. Because if you're not safe, they're not safe. And you're not going to be led by their willingness. Because I can tell you this, if I was your client, I would have told you I was ready, I'm so ready, I just want to get rid of this. And did I have the capacity? Absolutely not. And listening to my incessantness about my willingness would have put me in a worse place than I was currently in, and I was in a bad place. So this gives safety for you, which is brilliant. So let's break the SAPS process down a little bit here, right? On deeper reflection for this client, the client talks about many occasions where she was isolated in her bedroom alone, that she was punished by her mother. And in this punishment, she was disconnected from and spent hours and hours alone in her bedroom. She doesn't understand it yet, but she talks about hiding food in her bedroom. Now, the hiding of food is to help with the tonic immobility. Genius, Mary. Genius. It's absolute genius, isn't it? It's a young child hiding food. She knows she's going to be there for hours. She hides food to soothe her, to regulate her. Are we all starting to hear the problem in secondary? Yes, Lydia, survival. Are we all starting to hear secondary? Yeah, not able to regulate. Food for the soother. Food's the soother. Absolutely, Karen. Clear as day. In that situation, if I bring up SAPS again, right, I want us to have a look at her capacities here, right? Now, through this lens, I want you to think in this now, or in that experience, did she have safety in her experience of her body? Did she have anybody to co-regulate? Did she have anybody to help her understand what her experience was? Did she have any soft place to fall? Absolutely none. There was zero safety. That child had zero safety. So this adult has no capacity to be in any of that material belonging to that child. So she doesn't have safety in her environment. If all of this is going on inside, and the only thing that she has, and we don't know what's going on inside yet, all of this, notice I say this, right? We know that she's disconnected. We know that she's alone. What we understand is that she was feeling shame from the punishment. So she's alone in shame in her room, having to self-regulate. How safe was it for her to experience that shame in her body? Tell me in the chat. How safe was it for her to experience that shame or that punishment or that isolation in her body? Does she even know what it is? No, exactly, none. It wasn't. She doesn't even know what it is. Here is our problem, right? We are asking adults to be in this SAPS process when they're trapped in the child's process of SAPS. When they haven't got the capacity, this drives me mad, right? When I hear stupid things like emotions take so many seconds to complete. I'm like, well, you haven't got a clue. If you neurobiologically it may do, but phenomenologically it won't, simply because of this process in the child. So yes, we understand that neurobiologically an emotion rises and falls in so many seconds. But if you have got an unsafe SAPS process inside a client, it doesn't take that time. It eternally gets stuck inside the system with nowhere to go. So what we have here is a safety, right? We have this safety. The conditions for safety were not met for this child. So there is confusion in the experience. There's no co-regulation in the experience. There's overwhelm in the experience. So this client is unsafe in her body and doesn't therefore have the capacity to do the first facet here, or the first part, the second part of SAPS, which is bring tender awareness to her body's experience, because there's so much that she doesn't trust. She can't process it through the body because she can't bring awareness, so she's trapped under it, and there is no equilibrium unless it is brought to her by food. So what is our job here? What do we do here for this client? If we understand that she cannot process primary pain because of this child's consciousness version of SAPS that's still in her, then what is our role? Our first role is to have this boundary setting that keeps us safe, that we can sit back and go, okay, we know what we're doing here. We're not going too far too fast. We're not going too slow, too heavy. We know what we're doing. That's where we got to. No problem, Armadillo. I'll see you soon. So this is this is the first thing. But what else do we need now? How do we create safety? What is it in us that creates safety? What are the skills in us that create safety? Good contracts create safety. Hard to believe, but they do. Good therapeutic contracts create safety. Yeah. Good connection creates safety. Congruence creates safety. Co-regulation creates safety. These are all your skills. These are all your gorgeous skills. These are the skills that you get to bring, right? This is what creates safety. A good pair of hands. She knows that you know that you're not going to push her too far too fast, but you're also not going to hold her back because you're scared. You see that last bit. She also knows that you're not going to hold her back because you're scared. Yeah? So good safety skills. All of these safety skills that create the capacity, right? For her to move into awareness. What do we know about children who've experienced trauma? It's not safe to be in the body, so the capacities to bring awareness are not there. That awareness piece there, that A, now needs what we call unity skills. Deep unity skills, the ability to create awareness in the body safely. There's where your unity skills sit. People use unity skills, but they don't actually know where they sit in the process. Oh, let me just move this. They don't know where they are in the process. Yeah. So what we have here is we have safety, which is kind of all of your foundational regulation skills, all of that therapeutic stuff, all that co-regulation, or your own nervous system, your own safety you're bringing to bear. Then awareness is a very practical thing. I haven't gone into this tonight, and if for those of you that are in the course, interoception is where this A is. Anybody that is thinking about joining us in safe embodiment, we go into this in great detail. But interoception is the game changer for safe embodiment. Awareness is the first facet of interoception. Awareness is not available to clients who've been traumatized as children. You have to build that skill, and you have to actively build it in a contract with a client in congruence with empathy and unconditional positive regard. But it's a solid skill. You get to have it, you get to employ it, you get to know how, no problem at all, Samantha, you get to know how the client moves through it. Then we've got process. Once you bring a client into awareness, then we've got a process. That is also a skill. And you need two skills here. You need the skill of unity, and you need the skill of regulation. And you need this, well, three skills. You need the skill of resourcing. When you've got unity, resourcing, and regulation, then and only then can the client complete the awareness that they've just brought, bringing them back to equilibrium, which is then resourced. There is hard, fast skills in this that we get to build and we get to bring to our clients in a way that helps them move through this SAPS process, no matter primary or secondary. And it's ours to have, but we have to ask the question, right? Can we do this in a way that's helpful to our client and move them through that process so that we feel good about our work, us? So that when a client is finished, you're not worrying about whether they're going to be okay for the day. How many of you have worried about whether a client is going to be okay for the day? I know I have in the past. You know, how many of us hold the burden of the work and are efforting endlessly in the room trying to move the client somewhere where they don't have the capacity for, or possibly don't have the willingness for? Because these skills are ours, but they're actually give the client sovereignty. Like awareness skills is the client being able to say, oh, that's in my body, I can feel that, and giving you data, constantly feeding you rather than you running around a room, not metaphorically running around a room, trying to get the client to give you data. The client is giving you body data. And that's what SAPS does for you. It takes a lot of the heavy lifting out of it. So for this client, would you like to see her in action? Would you like to see her visually in action? So this client that I have just talked about, I'm going to show you her now. She is beginning the process of entering grief. We have been working for months up to this. We have been using this SAPS process. We have been using the hierarchy of embodiment. We know where she's going. She knows where she's going. I know where she's going. We've got it. There is a trust and a safety in the room, and she is teetering towards. And when I say teetering, I mean teetering. She's absolutely teetering towards, sorry that my phone is going crazy. She is teetering towards the pain of grief. Now, let me put the grief in context. The grief is the loss of the disconnection of her mother, in the shame, in the punishment. It's the pain of not being listened to. It's the pain of not being connected to. It's the pain of not being believed. So when she talks about grief, that's what she's fundamentally talking about. Does that make sense? So I'm going to let you hear a very privileged therapeutic session between the both of us. And yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. She has given all of this stuff over to us for her training, for you guys to be trained, which is just beautiful. I think so brave. And yeah, you know, it's not easy whenever you show yourself in therapeutic process. So you're about to see me in action, and you're about to see her. So I'll hand this over to you, and we'll see. Okay. And you see here the SAPS process in action. What you will see is the effort she is making and the lack of effort that I'm making. And I don't mean lack of effort. You understand what I mean? I mean, she's doing all the heavy lifting because she's got capacity to do the heavy lifting. And I am a mere bystander to her process, just watching every move of her. So here we begin.
What's been happening. I've been trying to slow down a little bit more and just be more present and with myself. And I've been noticing that the more I'm leaning into that and turning inwards, the more I've been noticing quite a lot of grief that I've been sat with.
Really?
So
we started again there. Sorry.
I'm a bit tired today, but I'm going to have a very relaxed day. I'm just going to take it easy.
How come you're able to have a relaxed day?
I think it's because last week I was kind of sat last night reflecting, thinking, you know, what's been happening. So I've been trying to slow down a little bit more and just be more present and with myself. And I've been, you know.
How many of you long for a client to say that? I am slowing down. I'm present with myself. I'm not avoiding, I'm not stuffing, I'm not eating, I'm not moving. I'm trying to listen.
And that the more I'm leaning into that and turning inwards, the more I've been noticing quite a lot of grief that I've been sat with. And I think it's just because it's been quite an emotional week, not necessarily in a bad way at all. It's been it's almost feeling like I'm purging a lot of grief that I've not been able to shift and move.
She says, note what she says. I'm being with myself. I'm being in connection with myself. And then she moves on to, not in a bad way. What does that tell us about the SAPS process? That she can complete the SAPS process in whatever version of this grief it is, right? That she is safe to process it. She's saying, it's not bad, I'm grand, I'm cool. So now you're starting to see she's been more introspective, more willingness, and more capacity. In that 1 minute, that's demonstrating the effects of that process.
And so the grief, just in terms of what that's been like and what that's felt like, the in terms of the grief itself, I was noticing with my partner, we had I had my parents' puppies here our dogs here last weekend, and we were looking after them. And I was noticing that I was getting this thought of, I'm not capable again. A little bit of that, because I know that was like the beginning of my pattern, and I know I'm going a bit off here, but what I'm trying to say is there was a bit of I don't know if I'm capable of looking after. What if I disappoint? What if I get it wrong? What if Mom and Chris, my stepdad, what if they, And so I noticed that was happening. I thought, So anyway, I had such a good weekend with the dogs, but as soon as they left, there was this overwhelming. It was just like a sadness, a grief, a loss, detachment, disconnection. All that was coming up, and all week I've just been feeling a lot of I don't even know if it's grief anymore, but it just feels like a lot of heaviness and a lot of pain, and it's making me emotional thinking about it. But the loss itself, I feel like, comes back to me and the grief regarding sort of the life I've not lived, or missing opportunities, or not taking on things where
she's talking in secondary language, but she's approaching embodied primary. She's trying to make sense of it, do you see? Is it the grief of the life that I've not lived? Is it the grief of the puppies? Is it the grief of... She's teetering, she's talking in secondary language, but she's starting to embody something very deep, something deeper.
Because that fear's just kept me away from it. It's like fear of having my own dog, or fear of having my own child, or fear of committing to a real commitment with a partner. There's a fear of stepping into that next part of life because there's so much resistance around it. And it's all to do with the idea of loss, because if I connect, at some point I'm going to experience maybe this loss, this disconnection, this grief, all of that comes. And so it was a little bit about that. It was a little bit about Dad as well, and this unlovable stuff coming back. Grief of just people that I've lost, but mainly the life I've not had for me, due to the pattern being so active. I don't know if I'm making sense at all, but that's kind of where I'm at with this. And just being able to sort of feel a little bit more comfortable with that grief, and feeling that I have more capacity to sort of sit with it and explore it and understand.
Do you hear her language? Who's doing the work in the room? There's something here, I don't know where it is, but it sits somewhere around here. I'm a wee bit confused about it, but I've got some capacity for it, and I'm wondering where it belongs. And she's doing the work in the room, right?
And actually,
have you got it now?
Yeah, I think I've got
that question that I asked her was a very important intervention. Have you got it now? I want to know, is she embodied to that grief now? What's she actually experiencing? What's her interoceptive experience? I'm wondering. So while she's making sense of primary and talking about grief and where it belongs, I want to see if she's got capacity to be embodied.
A little bit of it activated. And the difference here is usually in therapy, I come with a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, and I start in the stomach. But grief for me starts more in the chest, I think.
Tell me about the feeling in the chest. What's it like? She's feeling safe enough to bring awareness. Watch what happens next, right? So I invite her into awareness. So I'm very deliberate, very slow, not out in the narrative. Tell me about that awareness.
it feels like there's something trying to, and maybe this is a bit of the resistance. There's something, it's almost like two hands are trying to protect this area, and there's a bit of pressure there and a bit of holding it. There's a bit of a hold, just hold it. Don't, so there's something there happening, but when I try to just allow it to come, it does rise and it builds and it goes into my throat and it gets really sore. It's almost like I can feel a lot of that emotion here. And instead of it coming through maybe verbal, it'll come through my eyes, and that's where the emotions come out. But it builds and it builds.
Emotion in that is that rises. What is the emotion? What's the experience for you?
I think there's so much resistance there because
do you notice her slower, less verbal, more paying attention to your body? We're still in the first stages here of SAPS in awareness. I'm just holding her attention, holding her energy, slowing it right down, letting her be in it.
I know that my relationship with grief is not great. So I'm trying to push past that resistance. And I know that when I'm with it, it just feels sad, it feels painful, it feels it feels honestly miserable.
Miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable is an important word, isn't it?
It's like it's almost like I'm at the point where there's so much of that material, I don't even know where to begin with it.
Okay.
And
how am I going to process it? What do I do when it comes up? Where am I with it? Do you hear her asking the SAPS process? If I'm bringing awareness to it, but I don't know how to process it. I don't know how to move through it. I don't know what to do. There's so much of that material, you don't even know where to begin.
I think it's just because this week it's been so prevalent and it taps into so much of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And there it's taps into so much of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a bit of a breakthrough there.
Because I think it's about losing myself and not having the connections that have been what I want them to be. So the loss of that, even though the connections are there physically.
Did anybody hear that wee thing that she said right before it? It's about losing myself. She's talking about tonic and mobility. She's touching it. She's not in it, but she knows that this is why grief is so hard for her. Listen to this.
Because I think it's about losing myself and not having the connections that have been what I want them to be. So the loss of that, even though the connections are there physically, emotionally, they're not. The loss of not getting that need, or there's like something, it's like the miserable feeling, the sad feeling is like something's missing. Something needs to be filled. I'm just checking in with my body because I'm wondering, as I say that, if there's any emptiness, but it kind of feels like now that I'm in the chest, it's quite hollow. It makes me quite breathless.
She's processing now. You see her
there's
moving?
Tension, there's just a lot. It feels like it just feels like there's a lot to come. But yeah, loss, disconnection, all them words are just coming through. Uh, yeah, I'm not sure now. I'm kind of, I think I'm noticing myself coming out and
Out of it, yeah. See it. You see, you're just coming out of it, being able to regulate herself out of it. So she's touched a bit of it, she's processed through it, and she's there. So we're kind of like, okay, let's retreat, let's learn, let's have a look, let's. Did you see the process in action? You couldn't deny that process once you understand what you're looking for. So you're taking her close to something. No problem, oh, Wendy. Good luck with the replay. So this is really important. Did everyone feel safe watching that? Did you feel safe in your own body watching it? Because that's how I felt. I felt safe. I knew we had done 6 months of regulation work, resourcing work. We'd done all of the necessary safety stuff. We had worked our backside off. We had built capacity to be interception. I knew her capacities. I knew the tonic and mobility. She wasn't close to it. So we could work in it in awareness and bring in awareness through that SAPS process. And we're getting closer to primary. We're not on primary here, but we're getting closer. And we're not wasting her time. She's not wasting her money. I'm not wasting my energy, right? And I'm feeling safe and I'm feeling grounded. And I've done all of the previous work and I know where we will get to. Where she eventually gets to is the healing of that. So what happens is that she is in the experience, the full body experience of understanding her loss of self in disassociation. And she gets from loss and grief to the loss of herself and heals that internally as an experience and can basically heal from that primary pain from that process. But without that process, there is no access to the primary and there is no healing in the primary. It's not safe enough to do so. And that process happens again. So I think that's March 24. That process happens 100 times in 100 sessions as she deepens, as she processes, as she reaches equilibrium. And what do you think she learns every session? What do you think she learns every session that she can come through that process and back and literally titrate her way towards something that can be healed? What do you think she learns about herself? Agency, Andrea, absolutely. Sovereignty, agency, the very bloody thing that is robbed from us in trauma. She's learning through that process. I'm not pushing, I'm not pulling, I'm not led by her. She is doing the work. I feel safe, I feel grounded, I feel sure in the skills. I will not let her stretch herself. I know tonic and mobility. I will regulate it if it ever got there in the room. I know exactly what that looks like. We have a safety plan for it, we have an understanding of it. All of this is in play. And that is the only way through some of the work that our clients have from a safe, embodied perspective. And all that we're doing there, let me show you the skills that are on display. Safety skills, regulation skills, resourcing skills, aware stages of process skills, unity skills. You saw her unity skills. I feel it's in my body. It rises to my throat. That's a unity. That's her demonstrating what unity skills look like. I'm not over exercised. In fact, I'm looking back at it, I look as if I'm sleeping. I'm not sleeping, I promise. I've just got my head down because I'm writing. I promise I'm not that. Because I looked at it and critiqued myself and thought, God, if that was ever critiqued, you could say that I was disengaged and not available. But I'm listening and watching her so intently. I'm actually writing. But the efforting is with her, and when the efforting is with her, the agency is with her. And we're safe to have that. Has that been a helpful full round of case study? Do you see what I've told you today in the two points? Safe embodiment, hierarchy of embodiment. What was she talking about, but where was she going? She was talking in secondary language, but she was going to primary. I knew that. I knew it from that hierarchy. What was the process? Could I move her through this process? of safety. Did we have safety? Yes, we had safety skills in abundance. Me and her had safety in relationship. Could she bring awareness? Yes. She started to bring awareness to this grief, and then bring process to the grief, and then come out of the grief. Now, that goes on that was 10 minutes. What you see her is going back in the next hour, in that hour, going back in, and we're through the SAPS process and coming back out again, and back in and gaining more insights and having bigger breakthroughs. But she always comes back to equilibrium. And I never leave her without that understanding of equilibrium. And I know that outside the room, she can do that SAPS process by herself. And I'm not overburdening her, or I'm not overstretching her nervous system or her. It's a gorgeous process, and I hope that I've done a good enough job tonight. Is there anybody any lingering questions about the case study, about the 2 points that we've made, and about how beneficial it is for you, but ultimately your client? But when you're safe, they're safe. When you're in unity, they're in unity. When you're in SAPS, they're in SAPS. Any questions whatsoever that you'd like me to answer before because look at the time. We've been here long enough now. Contracts, curious contracts, conscious contracts. Conscious contracts for me, Andrea, are where are we going? What's your intention? Where are we? Are we in the heart of secondary, or do you have intentionality for primary? I'm not dragging anybody to primary pain. That is not my gig. Absolutely not. I'm not dragging anybody to prove any point for any models particularly. I am led by the clients. If they want to dive deeper, that's a conscious contract. They consciously know. Do they know what it is? No. Are they able to say, oh, in 2004 I had, or in 1996 when I was whatever age, and this happened and this ace happened, and do they consciously know that? No. Do they consciously know there's something deeper? Do we have this contract that that's where we're going? Because if we have this contract that that's where we're going, I need to do a lot of groundwork before we get there. And I can't expect to show up to a session and have a client regurgitate story, go round and round story, and expect to get anywhere. I cannot expect a client to recall their past and to deepen their process. That doesn't work. Because there's far too much at play to be sorted and organized and scaffolded before a client will ever deepen into their past. The body is the root. So conscious contracts, Andrea, are a very, very strong, important part of our Safe Embodiment course. We teach those conscious contracts. Where are you going? What are you doing? Congruent conversations. If somebody wants to just embody secondary, that's your conscious contract. Grand. But you both know where you're going. And it is measured by the client and in the client's hands. We are exhausted enough. I don't know if I can speak for all of these, but I can speak for the clients, the therapists that I work with and that I train. We're doing an awful lot of hard work. We are multifaceted human beings in the room. We're carrying our own stuff, we're carrying the client stuff, we're carrying the modalities that we're trained in, we're carrying the safety, now we're carrying the embodiment, we're carrying far too much. And we have to know how to, and it's not putting the onus on the client. It's not about onus, but we have to know how to get the client to work in a way that brings agency and releases us from the efforting that we are doing. And that's, so any other questions? Was that answer for conscious contracts helpful, Andrea? Yeah. And it sets up the safety element of SAPS right away. You can just see how then you know where you're going, you know what you're doing, you know what your intentionality is. Your client might have willingness, but your conscious contract is you have willingness, but you don't have capacity. We have to build capacity. You know that idea of trust the process. I'm Carl Rogers trained, right? So I spent 4 full years, 5 in total, training as a person-centered psychotherapist. So I know Carl Rogers inside out. And the idea that we trust the process is not fair on the client. The idea that we understand the process is fair. Understand the process. Understand the process and congruently communicate that to your client so that they can be in conscious contract with you. We're not leading anybody anywhere. We're not farmers. We're not herding cattle, nor geese, nor goats. We are in conscious contract. And we will work within that capacity with that client and build it if it's not there. See, I get hot and bothered. Right, okay. All right, any of you that have not joined our Safe Embodiment course, I invite you to it. There is 40% discount. It's in your, thank you, Siobhan. Hopefully that was helpful. It's in your emails when this is over. So if you want to join us in this Safe Embodiment course where we teach you all of this at a skill level, at a practice level, and we do some gorgeous workshops, then you can get started tonight on it, like as early as tonight. It's a hybrid model. Brilliant, Michelle. I'm glad it was helpful. It's a hybrid model, so it means that you can get started with a pre-recorded, and then we workshop the practice element of it. Leona has an email in your inbox with the 40% off. If you have been thinking about it, but not taking the plunge, I welcome every single one of you and your friends. You can give them the 40% discount if you want. You can bring everybody. I am not joking you. The more we get trained, the better. Brilliant. I appreciate your energy. I am so grateful for your energy tonight. I kept you a little bit longer than I wanted to. Much love for your practice. Look after yourselves, because you are the most important people in the room. Look after yourselves, take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you inside Safe Embodiment. See you all soon. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Grateful to you, Laura. You were hiding on the sidelines. I didn't see you. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye, Mary. See you soon. Bye, bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Bye-bye.